Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of CYC Youth Chat. My name is James, and beside me are our lovely youth members joining us today, Faiz, Gabriella, and Sandra. How are we, guys?
Yeah, good, thanks, James.
Good, man.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
And today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, finding the right crowd. So let's get started with the first question. What does the world tell us about who to mix with? So any ideas?
I think like in the world there's no boundaries about like who your friends are. I think that there's like a heavy emphasis on like, you know, that acceptance of everyone, not like judging anyone for their decisions and their like personal preferences. And like you're the one at fault if you have to like distance yourself. And there's like a heavy emphasis on like those virtual relationships as opposed to, you know, like physical face-to-face relationships. That's my opinion. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think there's a big push from a cultural perspective, especially in the secular world, of getting to know, I guess, everyone else around you, and depending on the social circumstances you're part of, whether it's school or university, that typically, in most circumstances, will define who you grow up with as a relationship point of view. So, from my understanding, it's more so, I guess, from a social paradigm point of view, where you grow up and how you grow up, whether it's university or school or sort of what kind of education, and obviously church being the other element to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like as you both said, there's this heavy emphasis on being friends with everyone, and I think that kind of ties into this idea that you should have everyone at your fingertips just so that you can use them. I think relationships are more for your own selfish gain rather than a more reciprocal thing, which is how the world sees it, which I think contrasts to how we might see relationships as Christians.
Yeah, 100%. Mm-hmm. It's like what I can gain out of this like situation. Yeah. I think that's so true. Yeah.
But there's this also question like that we usually get asked a lot. It's about, you know, these double standards. For example, as Christians, we're taught by Jesus and the apostles to be friends with everyone as Jesus was and to love them. But at the same time, there is a danger to it because it's also our salvation that's involved. So let's say we're hanging around the wrong crowd. That's possibly our salvation, you know, it's falling into temptation. So then again, we're faced with this contradiction when coming to this question. So how do we respond to that? How do we answer that question? You know, when we're asked, okay, yeah, guys, you're meant to love everyone, be friends with them, but how come I'm seeing you with this specific crowd, for example?
Effectively, what you're saying is that we as Christians are called to love everyone else around you.
Yeah.
I think from a perspective of someone that's a Christian, you are called to love everyone. We are all made in the image and likeness of Christ. And the way one priest used to say to me that if you think of every person in front of you in two lights, that they could be the only person they see Christianity in, and that's one perspective of anytime you interact with anyone. And the other perspective of thinking about it is that if you think of every single person and trying to see Christ in every single person in front of you, but then obviously it causes the question of wisdom. Like in a lot of circumstances, especially in the church, in a church culture, that's fine. We're brought up in the same way, same morals, same culture, all that sort of stuff. But sometimes, for example, you might be in a situation where you're at university and you're studying and you're growing up, or I guess 4 or 5 years with these people from university who may not have the same beliefs, who may not have the same sort of culture or even the moral standards. So it calls for wisdom sometimes, where if it's at the detriment of your spiritual life and you are caused to sin or you are straying away from God, and there is a clear separation, I think that calls for wisdom.
And I think like going off that, I think that we need to like differentiate between our mission as Christians and like also our journey to heaven. And I think like, you know, we are called to love and we are called to spread his love in every interaction that we meet. But at the same time, like Jesus had a small group of friends around him. And in the same way, like we are able to choose the people who we surround ourselves with. And like there's a lot of comments in the Philokalia, which is like the Eastern Orthodox written tradition by the fathers, and they talk about surrounding yourself with people who are going to contribute to your way of life. Even like Plato and Aristotle, they talked about like, you know, a true friendship and an authentic friendship is one where you are both seeking like you're both pursuing virtue. And so I think that there's a fine line, and we have to like differentiate between the people that we surround ourselves with, and these are the people that, you know, I might share you know, intimate details about my life with, or I might ask for advice from, or I spend like my time with them, or, you know, the people that I'm called to serve, or the people that I meet on a day-to-day basis. And I think that there is a clear differentiation there. Like I said, we're not taking away from that mission to love everyone and accept everyone for who they are. But at the same time, none of us is safe from temptation. And we are who we surround ourselves with. And like Proverbs is full of verses about that. How, you know, emphasizes so much on the point that evil company corrupts good habits. So we still have to be wise about who we spend our time with. But in saying that, that doesn't detract from our mission that we are called to love everyone. But how can we, you know, like serve others if our salvation is jeopardized? We have to be clear on that. Does that sort of make sense?
So you're saying that we should, you know, love everyone and try and spread the word of Jesus by showing love and being friends with them. But we also need to have, you know, as I said, the wisdom to be able to discern when it can have a positive impact, a negative impact on us in our spirituality. And that's when, you know, we should draw the line in order to protect our salvation. So is that what you're trying to say, to be able to discern between when there are situations like that, similar scenarios like that?
Yeah, and I think it's also about like who you choose to be your close circle of friends as well. Like they should be people who, you know, like are a positive influence on you and contribute to your way of life, or like, you know, contributing to your spirituality, or, you know, those things. Friends who are not afraid to tell you when you've done something wrong, or friends who are not afraid to call you out when, you know, you're going down the wrong path. That's like your close circle of friends, or, you know, the crowd that you might hang around with. And then that's like a different thing from, you know, showing and spreading God's love to every person that you meet and every interaction that you have. Sandra?
Yeah, I think it just reminds me of that verse. I don't know the exact words, but the one that says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man, or a righteous man, sharpens another. And I think, as you said, you just have to draw that line between the people who you might turn to for advice and just the rest of society, which obviously you have to, like, in your way of living, you always show love to everybody, but it's just the people that you would actually, that you choose to ground you and to go to when you have your own problems, or the people that you choose to surround yourself with, as you said.
Yeah, like the people that you spend majority of your time with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another question that people usually ask, what if I have decided that people are having a bad influence on me and it is an unavoidable situation? For example, I'm going to work or school and I see them on a daily basis. How do I manage this?
I think the first thing that we need to realize as Christians, and as a very good example of Daniel, in all circumstances, Daniel, his first inclination is turned towards God. He'd go to his room, get on his knees, open his window and look towards Jerusalem. And I think that's if I'm looking at it from a criteria or steps point of view, that's the first thing. Like, my first thing is, when I'm in this situation, the first thing I should do is turn to the Lord. And I turn to the Lord and ask Him for guidance and ask Him for wisdom in my actions, because sometimes people can not realize the consequences of their actions when they go down this path, and they decide to be a bit abrupt and pull out very abruptly. And I guess they're in a social circumstances where their friendship may break down, or the other person might get upset at. So I think it calls for wisdom that we actually turn to the Lord first and actually really think about it. And then the second thing is that it's all in context. So if, for example, that if the situations at school or university, I'm working on a project with someone, I think the question was that I need to be wise in the decisions that I make. If I'm filled in the Lord, like if I am full with the Lord and Christ in myself, that I will know how to react and I won't fall as bad. But if I'm not filled with the Lord and on a daily basis, and my heart is always with the Lord, the likelihood of you actually falling or doing something wrong or judging that person is a lot higher. It's a lot higher. So that's why it calls for us to live a life of prayer, live a life with God and be with Him. And then after we've sort of, I guess, been able to achieve this goal of turning to the Lord first in all circumstances and really thinking about it wisely before we make the right decision, that's when we can react to the situation. If it really is a detriment to my spiritual life, you can potentially be polite about it and maybe change the topic. If, for example, we're in a social circumstance and we're talking about something sinful, you can be polite about it, maybe change the topic, and try to steer the conversation away from that. Maybe once, maybe twice, maybe a third time, they might get it after that. But more often times, that the secular world in general, or even humanity, we view people based off their actions and the words they say. It's not a question of your Bible bashing or preaching. It's more often people convert or people see Christian people. It's because of their actions, and it's because of the humility towards other people. It's because of what they talk about and how kind and sweet they are. So if you can reflect Christianity in that way, like we are made in the image and likeness of Christ, and I remember one day was saying something about that if you search your soul and continue to search day in, day out, the one thing you'll only find is the Lord in the soul. So if we're made in the image and likeness of Christ and we are founded in Him, the person, I promise you, the person on the other side will really see that. He'll really see a man of God who will really see that this person is so polite. And you barely use words. You haven't used words. You haven't gone and spoken to him about the gospel or anything like that. It's just your demeanour, your personality. And there's heaps of people in church that you see that react in that way.
And I think like you have to be practical about it as well. Like be like, okay, well, this is my work situation. This is my school situation. You know, I'm obviously like, I have to go to school every day. I'm not going to be like, well, I can't come to school because, you know, the people are, you know, negative influences or whatever. Like you have to kind of come face to face with that reality. But you kind of you need a lot of self-reflection. And I think you need to be really firm in your beliefs. And like you said, the first couple of times are hard, but you set an expectation for yourself. And I think like, for example, like I went to, you know, like a pretty secular school, and, you know, at first they were like, oh, you're very naive, or you're very like innocent, or, you know, they were like, it was like a negative thing. But then it became something that was positive about me, that I was really like strong about what I believed, and I wouldn't compromise that for anything, even if it was something small. And I'm not saying that to like, you know, toot my own horn, but I'm just trying to give an example that like people eventually they do understand, and yeah, maybe they'll stop inviting you to those parties and they know that you're just not going to turn up. But you know, that it's like, I think that's more admirable because you stick to what you believe. You're not like tossed like the wind. You're firm in like, this is who I am, and I know that, and I know that I am loved by Christ, and that all I want to do is live a pure life and a holy life, and I want to love everyone around me. But these circumstances, they're not what I want to surround myself with. And I think that once you set that expectation, you have that constant self-reflection, and you have to make those decisions from the get-go as well. Like, this is not something I'm going to participate in, even if it's something simple, even if it is a party but there's no boys there, or there's no drinking there, or whatever. Like, I'm going to set that expectation. I think that there's that verse that says, like, no one leaves your mother, father, brother without like receiving tenfold. So like, God does give you that strength and that guidance, and you have to get that from Him. Like, that is from above, not from here. You have to really rely on that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so you're also saying that we should be the ones to stand out in the group. So because eventually we never know, our love for God and the actions that we display can actually have a positive impact on the crowd that we're surrounded by. And maybe, who knows, maybe they can come to know God. So you're saying that we should be the ones to be strong and firm in our beliefs, and be the ones to stand out and show them that this is who we are as followers of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and you may even find that like they'll start to come to you with their issues, or like they might see that you are really trustworthy and you are really like different from everyone. Like, I want to see what you have. Like, why are you so content, or why are you so happy all the time? Or, you know, why are you joyful in your suffering? And I think that takes that level of strength and character, but as well, like, you can still be friends with them. You can still get to know them and like enjoy their company. I'm not saying that you can't, but we're just saying like you have to be firm with your boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for your beautiful responses. Stay tuned for part 2 of this episode, Finding the Right Crowd. Thank you guys. Hey everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of Finding the Right Crowd. And continuing with our questions, another question that we've been given is, what influence can a negative crowd have on me? In the same way, what are the benefits of mixing with a crowd that has a positive influence on me? So, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess the first thing is that mixing with the wrong crowd inherently, there's obviously, everyone's heard this famous saying, it's the famous saying of, you are like the product, you're the product of your own environment. if my environment is somewhere that is not holy or righteous, maybe like going to clubs and bars and all this sort of stuff, then more than likely I'm going to be attuned to that. My vision's going to be of that. I'm going to be susceptible more to sin, more to temptation. So there are many effects that could lead to, I guess, being in part of the wrong environment, just to name a few.
Yeah, and I think like it's not only like a Christian concept. It's like a well-known thing. Like I was reading in like an article by Forbes, and they were like, if you want to like win at life or succeed, like you've got to be with people who are winners. You've got to be around people who are doing something better than you, who are like, you know, more successful in that area. So for example, my career, if I want to really do well, I'm not going to go and surround myself with someone who's really incompetent and unsafe in their job. Like I'm going to be surrounding myself with people who are, you know, really good at what they do, who